nature and mental health. We're going to be talking about that now. I actually have a degree in psychology and exercise science. I ended up owning gyms for 10 years in Los Angeles because I have a passion to help people live their most passionate and fulfilled life. And I was doing that in a physical expression when I owned the gyms. However, psychology, meditation, energy work has always been the background and the foundation of everything. I eventually ended up closing my gyms because I noticed that nature, the power of the elements, light, earth, air, water, and the stuff that's mapping that all together, which some people call ether, some people call that God, some people call that the morphic field. People have all sorts of names for this other force that maps out the other four elements. And so I'd like to discuss today the benefits of nature. And I got that idea because I was with the Human Garage crew. We're actually in upstate New York. We've got an event coming up this Sunday, June 2nd, in New Lebanon, New York. And we've got a house close by, and there's a little creek and a river going by. And I was out there this morning at 5:30 a.m., standing by the creek, and I was just remembering nature, remembering the benefits. I'm usually by the ocean. That's where I like to live, and my wife and I have a house by the Pacific Ocean. Back here, I'll explain what this is. This is not the Pacific Ocean, but I was in upstate New York this morning, and I was staring at the river, and I was recognizing the difference between the land in upstate New York and the land by the Pacific Ocean. Once you start to feel the earth, you start to be able to contrast. Just like we have these senses inside of us, right? Like taste, for instance. I can taste the difference between an apple and a grape because I'm aware that that's nourishment and that there's different types of nourishment. With taste, we can tell the difference between, well, I should say with our botanical senses, we can tell the difference between a food, a medicine, and a poison. That's how animals know what to eat, right? They go into the forest. They didn't go to school. They didn't get taught by a teacher how to eat. And they can go to a place that they've never been before, and they can tell the difference between food, medicine, and poison. We have that same ability. We innately know what is food, medicine, and poison with this taste. Well, there's other senses that we have as well, like feeling the energy. We can call it electromagnetic energy. We can call it dielectric energy. We can call it all sorts of things, but we can feel, for lack of a better word, the energy and the power of nature. And we can start to contrast the differences the more that we pay attention to it, just like we pay attention to food. For me, I noticed that I was able to actually perform at a higher level on a physical playing field versus people that were training, professional athletes training from when they wake up till they go to sleep. I was able to compete and win I was able to compete at a world-class level without actually training in the gym because I was accessing the power of nature. And I would like to discuss today how that relates to mental health, because doing it from a physical standpoint is great. But remember, I said at the beginning of this talk, I went to school for psychology. So actually, where my heart and soul lies is even beyond physical, into the non-physical. We can call that mind, emotion, and what we experience as mind and emotion is what the physical body is translating a non-physical essence into. And I would even go so far as to say that everything physical is a fragment or an aspect of something greater that makes us all up. And so that's one thing that we can do in nature, is we can connect with that. And that's very important for mental health. Now, one of the things that is critical to understand about depression, about anxiety, about the problems that we create for ourselves is that us concentrating and focusing on those problems are, I want to say 99%, but it's probably not that high because I'm just guessing here. But it's a majority of the problem, us focusing on the problem. And it's great that we have pattern recognition as human beings, and we have an ability to be aware of oneself and our placement within this reality. If we focus on our problems, then that just amplifies our problems. And there's other things to focus on. It's really hard to do that, though, when we're within our life. Going out into nature allows us to stop the focus. This is called rumination, where we're just like a hamster in a wheel, just going over the bills we have to pay, the fact that we hate our boss, my relationship, I don't trust my partner, I have to do this, I have to do this, I have to clean, I have to vacuum, I have to go do this, I have to do this, I have to do this, I have to do this. When we're doing this, I have to. It's building up the pressure of this story that we have. And there's very little of us to withstand that story, and we get depressed. We get too much pressure onto us. Yes, I'm outside right now. There's planes coming by. I'm actually in Boston. So my sister lives in Boston. I was in upstate New York. It's only a 2-hour drive. I was planning on doing this live outside next to the river, but the cell phone service wasn't that great. So I was like, how do I solve this problem? And I somehow used my powers of manifestation unconsciously. A few hours later, I'm here. Beautiful background, outside, in nature, with decent cell phone service. And that was just based on an intention I had this morning, where I proposed, this is going on a complete tangent here, but if you guys will, this is also an important golden gem. When there's a problem, rather than saying, I would like to do this live, but the cell phone service sucks, right? Because that could easily have been said. I think I might have even said that when I explained it. You can repattern that. I would like to do my live outside. This is a beautiful nature environment. Being outside is the goal here. And I need better cell phone service. We can say, and the cell phone service isn't very good here. The Wi-Fi isn't very good here. When we use the word and instead of but, we don't negate the first part. I would like to be outside when I do this live, and I need better service. Now we can come up with a different solution, right? Because and doesn't erase the first part. It still holds them both to be true. So I had bad service in the forest. Somehow I ended up with good service, with a very beautiful background outside as well. Okay, on to what I promised in the beginning, which is the benefits of nature and mental health. And I was talking about rumination. Well, when you're in nature, it's very easy to take us out of ruminating about, which is the two things we ruminate about, the past and the future. Those are the things that brings too much pressure on ourselves. Why does the past and the future bring so much pressure on ourselves that we feel depressed? Almost like we don't have enough internal energy to withstand the pressures of the past and the future. It's because we're not meant to be focusing on the past and the future. These are all infinite landscapes that don't exist now. Right now is this little slice of everlasting now that's here now. And we have the ability to deal with the present moment in a very beautiful way. No matter how much pressure there is now, we have an ability to deal with now. When we start stacking on the anxieties and the worries of the future and the regrets and the traumas of the past, when we start stacking that on to now, we have less faculties and energy to deal with that. Going out into nature, we have new smells. We have, I should say, ever-changing smells. We have ever-changing ground to walk on. We have to use our feeling, our sense of touch. A lot of times I was walking up a river this morning. We're walking on all fours. We have hearing, like what's going on over there, like in literally all directions up. We see everywhere out into nature in multiple, like not just close range looking at our 8x8 room with 8-foot ceilings, or walking up the perfectly, the stairs that are perfectly rise and run for our gait and our foot length, where we're just unconsciously aware of the present moment, but we're more consciously aware of the past and the future. That is what present society has done to us. We've comforted everything so that our houses are allowing us to never be present in the present moment. And we're actually present within this illusion of past and future. When we go out into nature, we don't have that benefit. We actually do have to look out for poison oak. We actually do have to watch our step to make sure that we're not stepping on a slippery rock, because the consequences are immediate. We get feedback immediately like, hey, pay attention. There's things that you can step on. There's things to listen to keep you safe. There's things to look at. All of that brings us into the present moment, and the distractions of the past and the future fade away. And literally, there's so much science. If you need science to go experience it first, if you need science to experience this first, there's so much science on the antidepressive effects of being in nature. You can look it up. You can look up something called forest bathing. There's lots of science on people that go forest bathing before and after. There's also this notion that we are nature, right? So us going into nature allows us to reconnect with our true self, and we get out of the frequencies of the Wi-Fi. So for instance, I'm on top of an apartment building right now, and I just opened up the Wi-Fi to see if I could use any of them, and there was like 50 Wi-Fi signals happening right now. So all of that is going through me. I just spoke of being on a river, in a house, in the forest, in nature, and there was zero Wi-Fi, very little cell service, sometimes no cell service. So what does that leave? That leaves the harmonizing energy of the trees, of the sound of the river, of the sound of the frogs. All of that has frequency as well. All of that is attempting as well to communicate with you, because you are nature. There's a term you can look up, biophilia. Biophilia is, I believe, how you spell biophilia. And it essentially means that we are attracted to this natural environment because it brings harmony to ourself. Another thing that's happening in nature, light. Light, light, light. Light is essentially what makes up everything. I'm looking up right now, and there's it's like a wooden trellis type thing above me. That wood is stored sunlight. Our entire buildings are made out of stored sunlight, whether it's wood, drywall, paint, all of that. Paint made from oil. Guess what oil is? Oil is, according to the regular theory, I'm open to there being other interpretations of this, but oil is essentially from a time where there were gigantic trees and very little things to break it down, like microorganisms. So these trees grew and then they just fell over. And as these giant plants grew, where there was lots of carbon dioxide in the air and no animals, lots of trees grew and they just fell on top of each other. There was no fungus or algae or microorganisms to break down the trees. So we just have like a mat and like miles of layers of trees that were just falling on top of each other millions of years ago. Again, I'm just going with the gravitational model of the universe, the Regulus theory of evolution. I understand that this all might be a matrix, this all might be an alien program, and we're just going through a computer program, and everything I'm saying is just a story. I'm open to that as well. But here, the story of what oil is that they're old trees that got compressed, and that's what oil is. It's essentially stored sunlight, because that's what a tree is, right? A tree breaks carbon dioxide and it takes light. So it uses light in photosynthesis, and it takes carbon dioxide, which is CO2. So C stands for carbon, oxygen is O2. So it takes carbon dioxide and it breaks it, and it sends the oxygen out into the air. We say that trees exhale waste gas, which is oxygen, which is what we breathe, which is true. So what trees are doing when you say that they're sequestering carbon, they're taking carbon out of the air, they're taking this carbon dioxide out of the air and they're turning it into the tree. And for most cases, the tree will eventually fall over and that carbon will make its way into the earth. So when we start cutting down the trees and burning the trees, we're taking that carbon in the tree and we're now burning it, and a fire consumes oxygen, and now we're turning that carbon and oxygen back to CO2. So a tree or a plant grabs carbon from the atmosphere and brings it into itself, and it takes hydrogen and oxygen from the water, H2O, sorry, I'm getting H2O, 2 hydrogens, 1 oxygen. So what is a tree made of? Cellulose. It was funny because I was just talking to somebody earlier today, and she was like, I don't need anything with ose. I don't need anything with cellulose, which is just talking about a capsule. And it's all bad for you. And I was like, she was eating a piece of bread. And I was like, anything that you're eating that's made from a plant, it has cellulose in it. Cellulose is plant matter. Cellulose is essentially carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen that are mixed together, and it makes the plant. So again, tree, carbon from CO2, hydrogen and oxygen from the water, and essentially all plant life is a mixture of carbon from the CO2, hydrogen and oxygen from the water. That's also what carbohydrates are. That's what fruit is made of. It's a different mixture of the two. Cellulose and carbohydrates are a different mixture, a different ratio of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, but it's still carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. So what is the whole tree then? The whole tree is carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen with a little bit of minerals from the earth. So when you burn the tree, once again, the fire consumes oxygen, releases the CO2 and a lot of other chemical compounds having to do with carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen into the air. And what's left over is the ash. And that's just the mineral from the earth. So a lot of people think that plants are actually made mostly of earth, and that's not true. Plants are made mostly of water and air. Now that we went on that tangent, let's get back to nature and mental health. Let's talk about creativity. So when we're walking through this environment where we're not just autonomically walking on a flat surface or going upstairs or walking around 90-degree turns, we're forced to balance our body. If we're stepping on a rock like this and having to grab onto a tree that's like this and putting our other hand on a slippery log, and it's not just balancing our bipedal, our 2 legs with the torso on top. It's literally like balancing even how my hand is placing itself on a slippery rock, how I'm pressing down on it to make sure the pressure is going straight down. If I'm reaching out and I'm putting my hand on something slippery, I'm going to slip forward. So there's all of these attunements that we're doing in nature that we don't even really realize, because that's what makes us human, is our ability to move through an environment like this But what this is doing is it's accessing all of our motor network in our brain, which is connected to a whole bunch of different parts of our brain. Our dendrites, they're the parts of the neuron that look like a splattered egg. For some reason, that's what I think about, like an egg on like a frying pan, because there's all of these shoots that come off of it, and those go to different neuron clusters in the brain. And every time we move our body, that's signaling different pathways in our brain. And this has to do with all sorts of things. It has to do with memories. It has to do with when we first learn how to do that particular balancing act. It just has to do with the right and the left side of our brain. For using our left part of our body, it's being routed to the right side of our brain, which then makes the right side of our brain more active. We hold memories in different parts of our brains, and we ruminate in different parts of our brains. The more that we move our physical spacesuit, the more that our brain is firing in different areas. And just the pure movement of different parts of our body in coordination is allowing the two hemispheres of our brain to interact with each other. What we do in society is a lot of times we get stuck in patterning. And that patterning is a program that doesn't interact with the wholeness of our brain, which then is access to our mind, which then has access to the greater self. So if we're just operating in one little thing that we think about all day, whether we're ruminating or maybe we're even working in a healthy environment, or we're just focusing on one thing, we're just going in a loop, and that pattern is stagnant. When we go into nature, we're using our whole body, we're expressing ourselves fully. That's allowing us to express mentally, right? This is mind that's coming into this electronic box. This is our electric computer, and it's opening up the channels, and it's enhancing cognitive function, and that's going to enhance your creativity. So especially if you're in a creative art, and we're all creative beings, all of us. If we're not being creative, we're not being human. So we are all creators. Going outside allows us to be more of a creator. We can get different ideas when we go on a walk. And in fact, all of the great thinkers, we can even say all of the ideas that have ever existed came from nature. A lot of the great thinkers are coming from when those people went out into nature and they're looking at a lake and they come up with the idea, maybe because they're staring at something and they realize they have a realization. Anyone has any questions about nature, please shoot. There's also an endorphin release that happens, which increases mood. So having to do with mental health in nature, that's what we're talking about. There is an endorphin release that gets stimulated in nature. A lot of times it has to do with just the physical activity of being outside. I'm going to sit in a squat here. Also, there's a lot of elements in nature that you're not exposed to inside, like flowers and trees and plants and animals and microorganisms and fungus and bacteria and even viruses. They're all out there, and they're all stimulating yourself to be more human, even if it's stressful. Stress is what makes us grow and adapt. And actually, that is what makes the plant beneficial as well. Have you guys heard of essential oils? Have you guys heard of eating foods that are medicinal? The reason why they're medicinal is because the plant has developed an essence to help it survive in nature. So for instance, a plant, if it doesn't have a capability to stay warm in a cold environment, I shouldn't say stay warm because it gets cold. If a plant doesn't have an ability to adapt to a cold environment, it's going to freeze to death. So there's essences within the plant that allows it to adapt to temperature, to wind, to being eaten, to the strength of it just growing up and being able to survive its vertical height. All of that, the plant has to develop a mechanism to survive. Those mechanisms get released into you when you eat the plant or when you breathe the plant. Some people call these things terpenes, or you can distill it into an essential oil. But these scents and essences are being released in many ways when you go into nature. The most easy to accept way is through the sense of smell. This is an olfactory sensation, and the olfactory nerves are essentially like up in it's an extension of your brain, and we take in little particles and we experience that as smell. And our sense of smell is our sense of smell. But if you look at an animal, with this long snout, why is a dog's nose so big? Why are four-legged animals, most of their nose is huge? It's because this is their primary sensation. Our primary sensation is our eyes. Our eyes take up a lot of energy, and I would say feeling, especially in our hands, manipulation. So we experience the environment through our hands and through our eyes, whereas a dog or a wolf, for instance, or a bear experience it with this gigantic nose. They also have huge satellite ears. Well, let's talk about the olfactory nerves in the nose. Those olfactory nerves, cells, I should say, are in all of our organs as well. So when we take in our environment, our organs are also responding. Our organs are where what are housed? Well, chemicals are released through our organs like adrenaline, norepinephrine, our glands and organs, as well as emotions are originated and stimulated and housed in our organs. Our organs are very interactive with our emotional body. Our organs organize the energies that are coming within us. So that's all I wanted to say about that. This is if what I'm saying seems like I'm making it more profound than it really is, it's because I actually see it as profound as it really is. I didn't think it was. I was confused too when I was showing up to CrossFit competitions after not touching a barbell in 10 months and being injured. That's why I didn't touch the barbell. And I could show up to a CrossFit competition versus 100, 200 other guys who are working out every single day, eating for performance. And I could show up and beat them all. And I'd be standing on top of the podium wondering, how is this possible? I've even went like years training people in my gym, it'd be with my methodologies and then beating them with me doing very, very little training. And the reason why I was training little, even though I own gyms, is because I've got pretty, and I don't like to say this, but just to make a point, I've got pretty debilitating injuries like 6 tears in my shoulders and dead nerves in my body. But anyways, the point is that I was able to win and be more competitive, and I had to ask myself how, and I had to prove to myself like how it was possible that I was gaining more power, not by training, not by adapting in a gym, by progressive overload, which is basically being able to stress your body out so that your body responds so that you can do more next time. I was able to do that in nature, so I went and I researched and I discovered how it is that it was possible. And for me, it is profound. It is so profound that I treat going into nature and eating the sun and eating and absorbing the trees and the plants and the earth and the air and the water, I treat that as important as eating food. And this is very profound to me. It's been proven on a physical playing field, and we're talking here about mental health, though, because for me, mental health is what's defining our experience of life. If we've got a program in here that's running that says that everything sucks, then everything is going to suck. And you're not a very useful member of society if you're creating from a mindset of everything sucks. And so I'm highly invested in everybody's life being wonderful and you creating your greatest dreams, because I would rather live in everybody's dream world than everybody's suck world, everybody's nightmares, everybody's fears and anxieties and depressions. Like, that's cool that they exist, and traumas exist for us. It's one of the reasons why we're here. I would just like to offer some tools to help us get over them so that we can start unpacking what else there is here in life. So when we go into nature, we also start to realize that we are stewards of nature. And one of the things that I learned in psychology, there's very few things that I learned from college, but one of the things that it made me aware of is that if you start to take care of something else, then you start to actually forget about all of your own problems, because you're in now a mode of service. And when you're in a mode of service, it's very difficult to be in a mode of complaining about your problems. And you start to realize that we are nature, and you start to take care of it like we take care of ourselves. And when you start to take care of nature, even just picking up a piece of plastic when you see it, or watering a plant in your backyard, or talking to the trees, you get out of your own head of the person at work that didn't say hi to you. Do you guys all realize all of the things that we worry about? Most of them, some of them, yes, are life or death, or they're real threats that we must handle. And usually those moments are handled in an instant. But most of everything else is just a repeat story about silly things. Even if it's the big thing, worrying about it really isn't necessary until the moment when you need to make a decision, right? Because it's the decision that we worry about. Like, is it going to go right or wrong? That's all silliness. Making the decision is the important part. But the other stuff, like that person didn't say hi to me, this person unfollowed me on Instagram, what does this mean? Oh my gosh, my sense of value is destroyed, or all of this stuff is very silly. And when you go into nature and you start to realize the vastness of life and our responsibility to it, and we start to consider what we can do to contribute to that, it really makes it impossible to be thinking about the fact that somebody cut you off earlier in that day, or that you spilled some ketchup on your shirt, and what do people think about? Like, all of those things kind of go away. And again, this seems like I'm making a more profound, like I'm embellishing this for the sake of just blah, blah, blah talking on this live, but it really does make tremendous difference. I was talking to an influencer, actually, a personal trainer. He just came up to me and started talking to me, and he was asking me about how I make decisions on how I purchase food at a farmer's market. And I told him to look at the health of the people, and more importantly, look at the health of the farmers that you're buying at's kids. Look at the health of the kids. And he said, you think that the health of the kids matters. And it was just a tip. But anyways, that evolved into like me asking them if they have any plants. And they said no. And it blew my mind. Like, how are you a human being and you don't have a plant in your home, especially if you live in an apartment without a yard? How is that possible? And they said they had 0 plants. I literally have over 100 plants in my house. Not saying that anyone needs to have that amount. It's a little bit obsessive, especially because I have a backyard with millions of plant life going on in there. But the point is, taking care of something is necessary for us to understand life. And taking care of children is necessary for you to understand what it means to take care of food plants. And I would rather get my food from somebody that knows how to care for and stimulate health in their children, because I know that at least that person has the ability to grow a decent apple if their kids are healthy. And I know that their kids are eating healthy if the food is that they're growing is healthy, like they're feeding that to their children. So that's a little tip. If you guys go to the farmer's market and you're trying to figure out who to buy from, look for the brightness, the prana in the people's eyes that you're buying from. Okay, so I have a question here, and that question is, how many times do I immerse myself in nature? I'm going to try and thank you for the question. I don't know how to pronounce. I don't know if... Josette Portelli. So she's asking, how many times a week do you go and immerse in nature, and for how long? Ideally, it's every day. And remember earlier when I was talking about getting out of the brain? A lot of that is moving, right? It's being adaptable. How does your body adapt, not just making a 90-degree turn to turn? How does your body adapt instead of just walking upstairs, but having to climb on all fours over boulders, over wet logs? Be careful on the logs, people, in nature, because a lot of them can be rotted inside. So you go to grab onto something, you think it's solid, or step on something especially can be dangerous, and it collapses. So be careful with that. This is all stuff that you need to be cognitively aware of, which again brings us out of the illusion of the anxieties of the past and the present and then the future, and brings us into the present moment. So my point is that I try to do it every single day. And then you ask, like, well, if the weather's not good every single day. Temperature is one of those things that we have conveniently boxed ourselves into, and we don't know ourselves outside of 72 degrees. We don't know ourselves outside of that, which means, once again, pattern is looping. And guess what is happening at 72 degrees? Guess what you've been doing at 72 degrees your whole life? Everything that you've been worrying about has always been happening at your perfectly set temperature inside your house. The moment you go outside to 48 degrees, which you would never ever dream of being inside at 48 degrees, or you go outside and your clothes get wet because it's raining out, or you go outside and your toes are freezing because you're walking barefoot on earth, or you go outside and it's hot and you're sweating. All of that is getting you out of that neurological pathway of your problems. And once again, it seems like, are you just saying that? I hope I'm laying it out so you guys can simply understand that getting your body and your mind and your experience and your emotions and your whole state of being, getting your body outside of your regular routine is getting your mentality outside of your regular ruminating. And the more that you do that, the more expressive you are as a human, and the more valuable you are to everybody. So the question was, how many times a week do you go and immerse yourself in nature, and how long? The ideal is every single day. This is why I have a house with a backyard that faces the ocean, and it also faces south, and it's also high up so I can see. These are all things that I prefer. I have a preference for. I prioritize. I don't live in an apartment where I'm in a box and it's very difficult to go outside to eat or to work on a computer and a table that's outside with my feet touching the ground. So, invitation to everybody. Find a living situation where you can go outside easily every single day with your feet on the ground. And guys, when you go look at places, take out your phone and look at the compass. This is important. Look at the compass. Generally, the sun is going to come up in the east and set in the west, but that changes during the year, which is really cool. When you're going outside every day, you notice that the sun actually switches positions. But when you're looking for places to live, find a house that the south facing is where most of the sun is. So if there's, like, let's say there's another house or a giant tree or a building that's facing south of your backyard, that means that your whole backyard is going to be in shade most of the time. Because if this is for northern hemisphere people, which 90% of the earth is in the northern hemisphere, which means that the sun is actually going to be oriented towards the south. And when the sun's oriented towards the south, that means that the sunlight comes in from east to west, oriented south. So make sure that when you're looking for spaces to live, that you consider the pathway of the sun, especially if you're buying a house. Make sure there's nothing blocking you, or that just be aware. It's okay if you're in shade, especially if you're in a hot environment. It's okay. But to be in 100% shade with no area to be direct sunlight, and then also if you want to be doing like nude sunbathing, you got to know where the bright sun is. If certain access to your yard has the sun and certain doesn't, and is there neighbors that can see into that? All of that's important when looking into a house. Use your compass. Once again, south facing is where the sunshine is. North facing in the northern hemisphere is going to have the least amount of sunlight. If you're in the north and there's something in the way, like your own house or a tree, if you're north of something, you're going to be in shade. It's likely going to be wet, which is okay, and colder. It's okay. But the sun is also where the money's at. Money, mono eye. It's all-seeing eye. It's what's illuminating all of us. All right, great question. So the question was, how many times a week? It's called all day, every day is the preference. Do I get to do that? No, I'm actually working indoors a lot, so it's usually at least once a day. I definitely like to go outside when I'm working on devices, because that means that the light around us is actually overpowering the light in the screen. Most people don't realize that even if you're in shade, there's more light accessible here. It is brighter here than if I go inside and turn on all of the lights. Even though it seems brighter inside, it's not, because that light is very weak. It's a sliver of the light spectrum compared to being out here in full spectrum light. So even though it doesn't look like we can't see the light, it's because 1% of the light spectrum is the visual light spectrum. There's much more to light than what we can actually perceive with these eyeballs. And we're picking up all of that energy being outdoors. And so when we go outdoors, that whole full spectrum light is going to fill in the gaps of the artificial sliver of inharmonious light that's coming off of our screens. When we're indoors, all we're getting is that sliver, that peak of a portion of the full light spectrum, which can be inharmonious. It's inharmonious, which means that the full light spectrum isn't full when we're inside just underneath artificial lights or staring into the lights of our screen, and our eyes are made to take in lights. That's why our pupil is black with melanin. Our pupil is the blackest blackness. It's the darkest part of our body. Why? Because It's absorbing light. So when we're looking at things, we're absorbing the light from it. And it's not just visual light that we're absorbing. That's another reason why when you go into nature, what color is it? It's green. What does green do? It fills in our heart chakra. And the way the colors work is weird because the trees aren't actually green. The trees are actually absorbing all of the light except for the green spectrum. So it's reflecting out. It's absorbing everything except for green. And green is in the middle of the spectrum, and that comes into our heart. So we absorb a lot of that green heart energy when we are in the forest. Okay, next question was, do I use sunblock? The answer to that question is a great resounding no. It's the biggest no ever. Sunblock. So remember I was just explaining with being indoors in the inharmonious frequency because it's not full. Well, sunblock literally does that. It makes the sunlight that's coming onto your sunblocked skin, it deletes a whole bunch of the spectrum, and now you're getting an inharmonious spectrum, a lot of which is blocking out the part of the light that burns us, gives us the sunburn, but it's letting in other parts of the light that actually could be doing damage to our DNA. Now here's the weird part, is that sunscreen stops us from burning when sun burning is the exact mechanism that tells us how much light that we need. If we're burning, we're in the light too much. Just like when we walk, if we fall forward, we learn to balance ourselves by leaning backwards. If we touch something that's too hot, we take our hand away because it burns us. If we're outside and we get sunburn, then next time we seek shade and we don't stay out in the full blasting sun all day. Or we learn to progressively overload ourselves to build up melanin so that we could absorb enough light so that it's not damaging us. Sunscreen blocks your ability to sense the light, to receive the light harmoniously, but more importantly, to sense the light. Sun burning is the mechanism that tells us next time I'm going to take more care. If you guys, most of you guys are like infants with the light. You have no idea. And this, sorry to be so judgmental, but I'm going to be. Most everyone are like infants. They've never been out in the sun and developed a relationship with the light. They've, for their entire life, put on sunscreen because they were told to. They were told the light was dangerous, and they put on sunscreen. You're like a child that puts their hand on the stove and doesn't have the sensation of burning. And you just leave your hand on the stove and you do fun stuff out in the sun for all day long because you don't have the sensation that you're burning. Ha 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 ha. This is what we mean, us health influencers that are negating the science. This is what we mean when we say sunscreen causes cancer. Because it makes people idiots. You are stopping your sensation of burning, and then you just stay outside all day long after being indoors for all winter, and you're just like, I'm going on spring break, I'm going to Florida, and I'm going to stay outside for 14 hours after being outside for 7 minutes over the last 8 months. I'm going to go outside for 14 hours, but it's okay, I have sunscreen. You're burning the hell out of your body because you have no relationship with light. Do not wear sunscreen, develop a healthy relationship with light, and be a responsible human being, like we've been for all of eternity. Okay, for all of eternity, there was not sunscreen. Okay, next question. Do you know why you can get pain in the head when you've been outside in the sun a lot? Should we wear hat and sunglasses then? This once again has to do with our relationship with light. If you're getting a pain anywhere in the skin, in the head, maybe you're dehydrated, maybe you haven't made your body capable of receiving light, maybe you're in a different geographical location than your body's designed to be. However, it's about developing a relationship with light. We don't need to be outside for 14 hours to play with our friends and get drunk on the lake, on a boat. All of that is just human stuff. Even look at the animals. They're taking naps in the shade during the hottest part of the afternoon or the day. Why? Because they know not to go blast themselves with the sun on bright summer days. Develop your own relationship. If you're getting a headache, figure it out. Yes, a hat can help. Make sure it's made out of, I almost said healthy fibers, but make sure it's made out of natural fibers. A turban can also really help to keep the energy in. These are like wires. A turban will be like the coating of a wire. Like all of the wires in our house, they have insulation. So if you put a natural fibered coating over our wires, it will insulate the energy to keep it stored within the body. Because sometimes the energy, if too much of it's leaking out, especially if you're doing energy type work or meditation, a lot of it will come spewing out of your crown chakra, and it's leaving you overexposed potentially to other dimensional entities and also just to the elements. So putting a cap or an insulation on your wires is going to help. Somebody else added to the conversation and said that it's detox. Why do we tire out when we are in fresh air? Well, the sun it's a lot of energy, and so it will make you feel exhausted. And there is actual proof and suggestion that we're less productive in the heat, which is why schools and workplaces use a lot of air conditioning so that we can focus on being productive, because that's how we measure ourselves as a human being, how productive we can be. So if you actually look at, now I was going to go somewhere, I'm not going to go on that tangent, but I was going to say, well, another thing I was going to say is that a lot of cultures have siestas, which is just what I was talking about with the animals. Taking a nap in the heat of the day is what our body calls for, so listen to it. But then you say, I have work to do. I'm working a 9 to 5 during that job. Well, recognize that 9 to 5s are not for your best interest. They're not. They're not. Even sleeping once a day is just so we can be more productive for society, so that we can be awake and aware and productive. So realize, and I don't take naps. There's been times in my life that I did, but now I really don't feel like it. I'm kind of up and awake. I have done polyphasic sleep, but if you feel like being outside on the weekend, let's say, and you feel like sleepy, take a nap. Listen to your body, develop a relationship with your body. Actually, I should have mentioned, comes first before developing a relationship externally, but getting out of the ruminating and the mental health issues allows us to do that. All right, there was another question I saw that was interesting. Someone said, I live in the mountains, not too much sun now. Go outside. The mountains, where it's sunny and cloudy, is more light outside than the brightest you can make your interior. It's like tens of thousands of light energy on a cloudy day compared to 100 lux indoors, even when the clouds are out. All right, simple question right here. What about if you live in the city? Are parks effective? Yes, parks are effective to ground. And there's a reason why parks are in all cities, because it's necessary for mental health. It's necessary for human health. Go to the national parks. Go to the public parks. Be there. Say hi to the trees. The trees desire your companionship as they can feel union with you, and they're open and waiting for you to unite with them. What about vitamin D? Vitamin D is about the least of, it's the reduction mechanistic science of being outside. It's like the only thing that we as civilized society think is benefiting us when we go outside. And then they're like, well, just take this vitamin D supplement, and now you don't need to go outside at all because the sunlight is horrible for you. So you should stay inside and wear sunscreen anytime you go outside, and wear sunglasses, but just stay inside. Take this vitamin D and you'll be all good. Okay. What's the difference between discipline, procrastination, and listening to your body? What kind of job do you recommend that isn't a 9 to 5? Oh, I never finished that thread of thought. Maybe don't work a 9 to 5 could be a solution to that. And if you're like, well, what does that mean? Great question. I was also 17 years old once. I worked part-time with a bunch of 9 to 5ers, and I remember working there 20 hours a week and thinking, this sucks. And then meeting people that were there for 50 years doing the same job at 70 years old. They were there the whole life. And then I'm just thinking, okay, this employee thing isn't for me. How can I not do this? And I figured it out. You guys can all figure it out as well. Being an employee is just satisfying our addiction to a paycheck. We're trading our time now so that we get paid next week because we don't trust ourselves to build something, stay consistent, be valuable to others in ways that may pay off next week, or it may pay off next year. It may not even pay off this lifetime or this decade, but it does pay off. And you can figure out how to be professional at just about anything if you stay consistent to it. I don't know the exact fact, but I do know that if you are consistent at something for 1 to 3 hours a day, that you are essentially again, I don't remember the exact fact, but you're better at 95 to 99% of the general public. And if you're better at 99% of the general public at literally just about anything, you can charge for that service. You just have to pick what you like doing for 1 to 3 hours a day, or 10 hours a day for some of us, if you really want to go for it. What do you like doing? Do it every single day, and then you're going to be at a professional level that you can provide a service to somebody else doing that thing. It literally doesn't matter what it is. There was meth heads in downtown LA that were cleaning up. They were like scraping gum off the sidewalk. And I used to look at these guys, and they were just doing it because they needed something to do for no reason. And I would look at these guys and be like, they could charge for this, but they're not. They're just doing it. You could literally do anything and eventually create a business out of it where you don't have to work 9 to 5. But the cool thing about owning a business is that you work all day long. You actually don't get the time outside of 9 to 5 when you're owning a business. So make sure that is something that you love, because you're essentially trading the 9 to 5 for 24/7 doing it. And so just pick something that you love and now you don't have a job anymore. You just have your life, and your life is valuable to others. But it's not like you trade the 9 to 5 for 3 hours a week. You trade the 9 to 5 for 24/7. And it's a more beautiful and exciting way if you chose wisely and you listen to your body and you listen to your heart. For those of you who are out there who have been listening, the great thing about astrology or things like human design is that when you actually get read your chart and they say that you're this type of person based on the stars and your alignments and your values based on your chart, and you actually are like, oh, that's exactly how I'm living my life, that means that you've been listening to yourself. If you're in a job that doesn't vibe with who you are, get out of that and do something. If you're a more analytical person and you're forced to be creative and you don't like that, or if you're an introvert and you're forced to be an extrovert, or if you really care about people and you're forced to do things at work that trash people's health, like let's say you're a bartender, but you really care about people and people's thriving abilities, it's toxic for you. It's toxic for you. There are other people that actually thrive in an environment where they're stepping on the heads of other people. There's people, and I'm not saying that's unhealthy. I'm saying there's people that thrive on being better than others. If that's not you, if you thrive on another version of that and you're not, and you don't like your corporate job where you're taking advantage of other people, there's other people that will fill that role and be filled up by that. Whether it's another job or another business, that you can be fulfilling yourself. Once again, if you guys, just a reminder, if you're in New York, Montreal, Boston, Rhode Island, Providence, basically anywhere in Rhode Island, anywhere in Massachusetts, anywhere in upstate New York, anywhere in New York, actually, we are going to be hosting an event where we're doing fashion maneuvers and so much more with Human Garage this Sunday, June 2nd, in New Lebanon, New York. Somebody just asked, I love the Kriya that we did on Saturday. So we're talking about what I did to open up for Human Garage. I opened us up with the Kriya where we work for sound. And the answer to that is no. I don't have that available anywhere to the public. Come to a Human Garage event where I'll be opening up for the fashion maneuvers, and you get to experience this amazing practice that I came up with to allow us to start stacking awareness, to start building a grander conception of self. However, with that said, I do have over 100 Kriyas and many different psychological practices that I call Skillful Psyche in my program. If you just go to my website, raofoferth.com, R-A of Earth, all one word, .com, you'll see a way to practice that stuff. All right, take care, everybody. Until next time.